This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglin.
Boo! It's Halloween, and the wildlife of Kentucky plays a big part in it. Bats, spiders, snakes, owls, none of which are evil, but at Halloween, for some reason, we believe they are. This is our annual Halloween special featuring the late, great Laurie Davison and the legend in wildlife, John MacGregor. We go inside outdoors to scare up a little fun. Next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
Deer in the headlights. Watch out, Mr. Deer.
Singing with your kids in the car is one way to keep deer hazard season in mind. And should a deer catch your headlights, flash those lights, sound your horn, break its concentration to scurry it along.
There's one.
And where there's one, there may be 2 or 3 more. Deer hazard season runs through November. So be wise behind the wheel while nature runs its course. A message from Fish and Wildlife and the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety.
I have never seen anything like this.
I can't believe I waited so long.
What will you say?
My heart was pounding.
This is Kentucky. It's deer season, and it's
Outstanding.
over 50 Boone and Crockett deer last year. Modern gun season opens November 12th, with archery season open now.
Yeah.
What do you say?
I can't believe I made the shot.
Get your license and deer permit now, and take aim on the thrill at fw.ky.gov. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin, and I'm not sure which is scarier, the wicked creatures of Halloween or my 2 guests. They are wildlife biologist Laurie Davison, who is in charge of the Salato Wildlife Education Center, and noted amphibian and reptile expert John MacGregor. We are here to talk about the fact and the fiction of wildlife at Halloween. Wildlife, to me, is all around us every day, but a lot of the critters that surround us in wildlife, they get this bad rap because of Halloween. Bats and spiders and owls and
snakes
and
black cats.
Snakes aren't Halloween.
Snakes, oh, they are for some people.
They are serpents. It's not as much a snake, but a serpent. And their fangs, and they're coming at you, and they just don't want to say hello, they want to kill you. So, John, Laurie, now I look at you as the best folks to debunk the myths of Halloween and why animals have gotten all of this bad rap thanks to Halloween. You take deer. Do they walk around with the stigma of Christmas? Do rabbits walk around carrying the banner of Easter year-round, or are they Easter for one day and then they go back to being rabbits? You take spiders and snakes and owls and werewolves and everything else, the animal kingdom and Halloween, and they get to carry that with them year-round. I really don't think it's fair.
Agreed.
John, you think that's fair?
That's kind of why I like those animals.
Your specialty is swamps and the things that live in swamps, things that bite you. List off some of the creepy, crawly creatures that you like so much that are Halloweenish.
Well, I guess I'd start with bats, and then I would add owls, and I would add spiders. I like all that stuff. Anything slimy, anything that's crawling around in the dark.
It's one thing that animals of Halloween are drawn to is that they are black, they hang out in the shadows, they are nocturnal, so they're active at night, they are mysterious. I was talking to a wildlife biologist today, and she brought it to my attention that house cats are exotic animals. They don't belong here. They're domesticated creatures, but if you put them out and they become feral, they are invasive, and we don't need them, and you wouldn't think that of a poor old kitty cat laying around the house.
I'm thinking it's only black cats that are Halloween cats.
Now, I have a black and white cat, and I can see how some people might think he's evil.
I have a friend who had a calico that is hands down the most terrifying animal I've ever met in my life.
There's something about a cat, and I don't know where does that come from, folklore or where?
Oh, yeah. There's a couple of different things about cats. Cats have been known since the Dark Ages, I believe, as familiars of witches, and that got its start with single older women because they hung to themselves and stuff like that. They were determined by the public to be creepy or evil in some way, and they had to relate the cat some way to that as well, I suppose. So they decided that Satan had given her a cat, and this was her way of communicating with Satan. So that's one. Another thing is during the Black Plague, there's a strong cat link to the bubonic plague that is interesting, and they considered, because everybody was dying right and left of this plague, witchcraft was, of course, one of the things brought up as a possible reason, and everybody went on a cat-killing spree. The nice thing for dark-colored cats, though, was that in these pre-industrial cities that were dark and dingy, the dark-colored cats got to hide out, and the white ones got killed out really quickly. But I do think that dark cats, for a variety of reasons, have always been associated with evil.
John, I take it you are a fan of Halloween.
Oh, it's my favorite time of the year.
I'm glad to hear him say that, Laurie, because it is my favorite time of the year, too.
I love Halloween.
What do you do to celebrate at the MacGregor household?
Well, we decorate for Halloween. We decorate the whole house and the yard.
Do you do like some people do at Christmas, that people have to come by to see it to believe it?
We're on a dead-end street.
Do you carve pumpkins or put the plastic ones out from the store?
Neither one. I put out skulls. I've got a space alien baby preserved in a jar. I set that out on the porch. I have jars of snakes that I've picked up and run over on the road. I put those out.
Do you have sound effects to go with it?
We have voice-activated decorations, like a screaming bat that we hang from the gas grill. And it twists around and screeches, makes noises.
I'm going to get your address. When does this spectacle open?
We put it all out on Halloween.
Oh,
Just leave it out for one night, because I had things stolen a few years ago.
So it's not there October 1 through. It's just one day.
It's just one day. I take everything in as soon as trick-or-treat night is over. I do have a Miley Cyrus that I have tied to a life-size poster of Miley Cyrus. I tie that to a hemlock tree in the front yard and leave it up for a few days.
Okay.
The neighbor girls moved away, and they left that on the curb, and I just didn't want it to go to waste.
We have established that Halloween is the number one holiday. I assume that it's number one in your book, too, or you like Christmas, Easter?
Yeah. No, I love Halloween. I like them all, but I really love Halloween. For me, it's not about decoration so much as activities, though. We go do stuff on Halloween.
What if it were true? The ghost story tales. And a long time ago, I was the executive producer of Kentucky Afield Television, was host a little while before Tim Farmer came on board. We set up a campfire, and we got some conservation officers and other folks to come around, sit around the campfire and tell ghost stories. The activities you do, that would be among them, the telling of these eerie tales. Let's talk about the wildlife of Halloween and how wildlife has gotten, in many ways, a bad rap that follows it around year-round. And we will begin with John's favorite, the bat. Do they really swoop down and bite your neck? Are they out to get you?
Well, they swoop down, and if you don't bathe very often, you might have a cloud of bugs flying around your head. And the bats are just there to do you a favor. But you interpret that as they're swooping at me.
That would make sense. If you are surrounded by bugs that are flying around because you're dirty and don't have good hygiene, never thought about it.
Well, remember Pigpen from...
Absolutely.
Yeah. He always had a cloud of flies around him.
I love it.
That is an ideal example of why a bat would swoop down anywhere in your vicinity. Otherwise, if you're clean, you put on your deodorant in the morning, how close is a bat going to come to you?
Well, not very close, but if you stand under a street light at night and the bat is coming in and swooping around to catch the insects attracted to the street light, and you're going to think he's swooping at you.
Then he's swooping to get bugs under the street light.
Yeah, and if a bat gets in your house, and it'll be in a room, and it'll be flying around trying to find a way out, just human nature, to perceive the very worst in the behavior of wild animals.
It's all about me. It's not about the bat trying to get out to get back to its natural habitat.
Yeah, just open the window and the bat will fly out, and that's the end of it.
Laurie, bats are one of your favorite creatures. I remember you saying on a previous show on this topic.
I do like bats. I like them a lot. I think they're really cool. Flying mammals. You can't get better than that.
There are 3 flying mammals, if I'm correct. There's Rocky the squirrel. There is a bat. Is there a third flying mammal or just those 2? We are going to have to let that subject simmer and stew in the witch's brew for a little while. We have to head to break. Kentucky wildlife specialist John MacGregor and Laurie Davison are with me. And up next, the vampire bat. Yes, Virginia, they do exist. As surely as love, honor, and devotion exist. Is it the right holiday? We'll tell you where when we come back next on Kentucky Afield Radio. This is our Halloween special on Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin, and in the haunted studio with Laurie Davison, who runs the Salato Wildlife Education Center and the state's undisputed expert on amphibians, reptiles, snakes. His name is John MacGregor. We were talking about vampire bats. There is a vampire bat, as I understand it. They don't live in Kentucky, though. Where are they from?
In Central and South America, there are, I think, 2 different species of vampire bats.
So the actual word is vampire bat. You Google it, you're going to get Dracula and all this stuff. But there is a real species of bat called the vampire?
Yeah, but the name vampire comes from the mythology. I mean, these bats make little cuts in your skin, and the saliva is an anticoagulant, and they actually lap the blood. They don't suck the blood.
So, when you say your skin, are they actually feasting on people, or is it an animal or a cow, or what are they after when they do this?
They mostly feed on the blood of domesticated animals because they're easy to catch and they can't get away. There's a pretty interesting video that I saw online a couple of years ago of a vampire bat defending the chicken from another vampire bat. and he had slashed, the legs of this chicken was lapping the blood, and then he was keeping the other vampire bat getting it. It's really neat. I think it was called A Vampire Bat Defends His Chicken. It was really cool.
So do the people in Central and South America have to fear that a bat may swoop down and get them there? Would you say, or is that going to be more of a dog, cat, cow,
goat? It's mostly cows and chickens and that sort of thing. But if you sleep outside with your feet in the open, uncovered, you may have a vampire bat visit you.
I just have to throw in, just because I think they're cool, I mentioned the flying fox, and I think most people don't know really how huge these guys can get. They are a bat, like John said, and there is, I'm trying to remember, the greater flying fox or something like that is the largest bat in the world, and it's got something like a 5 or 6 foot wingspan. They're massive. So if you're afraid, people in Kentucky or here in the U.S. are afraid of the little tiny bats that we've got here, go over to South Asia and the bats are just utterly horrifying.
You bring that up, the flying fox again. A minute ago I said there are 3 flying mammals, and I was mistaken. Now there are 4. You got the flying squirrel, which we call Rocky. You have a bat, which is a mammal, the flying fox, and the 4th, reindeer at Christmas.
They're really creepy.
Yeah, they pull in their wings when they get on your roof so that they don't scare the kids.
How they do that, I will never know. I think we've established, though, that bats aren't really the bad guys that they're made out to be. In Kentucky, how many species of bats are there? About 15. And they eat primarily insects?
Insects, and a few eat spiders, but that's it.
So anyone in agriculture, the farmers have to love these things.
Yeah, big brown bats eat potato beetles and corn earworm moths and things like that are major pests.
Animal number 2, it's a spider, the black spider. We think the black widow is utterly frightening, and if it comes near you, it bites you, you die. True
That's
don't die.
way false.
What's the truth on spiders? There's got to be a ton of different ones in this state.
My brother actually was bitten by a black widow spider when he was little, and the worst that happened to him was that he got some pretty interesting swelling at the side of the bite and on up his hand. He was picking up rocks. And numbness, and it went away rather quickly.
Now, a brown recluse, is that a different story? What's the most vicious spider in this state?
I've handled thousands of spiders, and I've never had any spider bite me. You're not going to get bitten by a spider unless you grab him by the leg and force him to bite you. Even a black widow, I've had them crawl across my hands, and they're not going to bite you.
You have to dare them to do it, and even then they still might not.
Yeah, you have to really stress a spider. Now, if you pick up a rock and there's a black widow under it, and you've somehow pinned one of his feet, with your finger, you might get bitten.
So they don't know the rules. They don't know they're supposed to be mean.
Even though I'm a biologist, and even though I recognize their place in the ecosystem and the value of spiders as far as, eating other insects and providing a meal for mammals like bats, they just utterly creep me out. It's just way too many legs. There's no skeleton. It's just like big toxic bags of goo that scurry at you.
For sure, and a spider will provide one of the most adored decorations of Halloween. That's a spider web. Doesn't even have to be a spider on it. If there's a spider web, it's automatically creepy. It's Halloween. Tell me the role of a spider in nature in this state.
Spiders specialize in certain prey just like any other animal does. You have the bolus spiders that actually have a little ball of web on a string, and they swing it around and fling it at a fly or something and catch it and reel it in. It's like trout fishing.
Really?
Yeah. And then you have, the wolf spiders, and they don't catch anything in their webs. They go out and prowl and catch things. You have the jumping spiders that they attach themselves to a stick or something and leap off into space and grab a passing insect and then pull themselves back with a strand of web. That's like bungee jumping,
Without spiders, we would not have Spider-Man. I would hate
That's a good point.
I would hate to live in a world that didn't have that series ongoing at the theater every year.
My children would be suicidal. They love Spider-Man.
Things eat spiders. The spiders are part of the diet of what? Raccoons? Skunks? What?
I don't know. Armadillos eat spiders. Lizards, frogs. But the spiders turn the table sometimes. I found a dead pickerel frog with a wolf spider in its mouth, and the wolf spider had clamped down on the tongue of the pickerel frog and
killed it.
Killed it.
And the spider also was dead?
Oh, yeah, they were both dead. With a spider, the circulation system of a spider is kind of like the brake fluid in your car. If you puncture the line and the fluid leaks out, then the spider doesn't work anymore. So if you injure a spider, all of that fluid leaks out, and he gradually becomes immobile. And that's kind of what happens when a frog grabs a spider and bites down on it. The spider's as good as dead. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a hydraulic system. That'd be a good science project.
I like that.
Building a spider.
See, wildlife biology isn't that hard after all. Owls. There is something about the hoot of an owl that makes people nervous. It makes them scared to go out at night. An owl will fly very silently because that's one of its strengths, to swoop down on prey, and the rabbit or the mouse cannot hear it coming. And yet they can catch it, and you will hear an owl kill things that it is about to eat, a rabbit or some little mammal. It can turn its head almost all the way around.
That's right.
What else out there about an owl makes it so darn scary?
I think owls are one of those that if you're out in the dark at night, humans are not blessed with excellent night vision. And so every noise, I think, has the potential for being dangerous. And owls at night, any noise at night, I hear a stick break when I'm camping when I was a kid. It was Sasquatch, It's definitely Sasquatch. And even when you're older, though, and owls just sound a little bit haunting and a little bit creepy. Plus, we've grown up with I don't know how many movies with owls that foretell, evil and death and things of this nature. So perhaps if I had grown up in a different country, I wouldn't find owls that creepy.
Owls are supposed to be wise.
We look at other people as being wise, and there are certain animals that look wise just because of where their eyes are located. A rabbit looks stupid because his eyes are on the sides of his head, and you can't look a rabbit in the eye.
Yeah.
But an owl, a cat, a canid like a fox or a dog, all these cute animals, and they all have eyes where you can make eye contact with them, and I think that's a big part of it.
If you want to know if an animal is a predator or if it is prey for something else, for example, if a wolf is a predator and a rabbit is what it's going to catch, simply because of where its eyes are located. If it has two eyes in the front of its face, such as you and I have, or if you have eyes on the side of its head, has to have the ability to see all around it, to see what's coming. And that's just a protection mechanism so that it can survive. Now, is that right?
Yeah, largely. A lot of the prey species, herbivores, have the eyes on the sides of the head, and that is very much a defense against predation. They need to be able to pay attention at all sides, and predators need to be able to focus on what they're hunting.
Is a monkey a predator because it has eyes in front of its head?
A lot of monkeys are predators.
Yeah.
Well, and another thing to think about here is a lot of the apes are arboreal. They live up in trees, and they have to be able to judge distances to jump from one limb to another or whatever. And to do that, you need to have bifocal vision. If you've ever tried walking around with just one eye open, you lose your ability to judge distance, and it's pretty weird. Bifocal vision is really important.
John, we've got to get to a break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you about something you know more about than anybody in Kentucky, snakes. It's our Halloween special. This is Charlie Baglan on Kentucky Afraid Radio. Charlie Baglan back on Kentucky Afield Radio. I've been saying Afraid Radio. This is our repeat show, and we do this every Halloween, featuring John MacGregor, the wildlife biologist extraordinaire, and the lovely and late Laurie Davison. She, for many years, ran the Salato Wildlife Education Center in Kentucky's capital city. Do you know a witch? Do you know a goblin? Is your attic haunted? I not only know a witch, I have dated two of them, and I have lived to tell about it. You've heard the term cold-blooded goes well with Halloween. Like snakes, they're not active this time of year. It's too cool. If you see them out stirring around, it's on a sunny day. We'll talk more about what gives the wildlife of Halloween a bad rap coming up, but right now it is time for our fishing report.
This is wildlife biologist Gabe Jenkins. We have fun with Halloween, but let me tell you something serious. Bats, owls, snakes, we might call them scary nighttime creatures, but the one animal you should fear is deer. November is deer mating season, when deer are most active. Bucks are chasing does, and like a ghost, they can appear out of nowhere and dash right in front of your vehicle. So, be wise behind the wheel while nature runs its course.
A few seconds for safety from the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Charlie Baglan back on Kentucky Afraid Radio. Almost said Afield, but I made it. I said Afraid. It is our Halloween special. Laurie Davison from the Salato Wildlife Education Center is with me. Also, John MacGregor, our state's expert in herpetology. And if there is something about nature that sort of gets under your skin, I bet you can tie it back to Halloween when you were little. Like snakes, John. Snakes have a bad rap.
Well, snakes have a bad rap for the same reason spiders do. Spiders have too many legs. Snakes don't have enough.
Don't have any.
Yep.
So, we can tolerate anything with either 2 legs or 4, but
if it looks a little bit like us, then it's got to be okay.
Somebody actually did a study on that. I couldn't tell you, which folks it was. It was an anthropological study, and they had noticed that those fears crossed cultural boundaries, and so they started looking into it and found that, yes, fears of spiders and snakes did, in fact, cross-cultural boundaries. Didn't matter where you were, there seemed to be this fear of those two creatures, and they thought, well, wonder if it extends into primates. And sure enough, it turns out that apes show an equivalent fear to spiders and snakes, which I find interesting. But yeah, their hypothesis was the difference. The more different something is, the more scary it becomes.
It is different from us. A centipede is weird. A seahorse is weird. An octopus is weird. You and I are not. But an octopus looks at you and me, and oh, that's weird. I'd say for probably very good reason.
Definitely.
It's different from what we're used to. Plus, you can't very well query any other animal to see why they're scared, but I would bet, again, it's different. It's dark. It's a different shape. It hangs out in the shadows, comes out at night. Would you think whatever the animal being questioned, surveyed, would say, yeah, it's all those things?
Yes.
And it hides all the time, and when it suddenly appears in front of you out of nowhere, that startles you, and that's kind of the beginning of...
So we were talking about snakes, and heaven's sakes, there's a lot of different snakes, and snakes are good. Wouldn't want to live in a state without snakes. How many different snakes are there in this state, John?
32 different kinds, maybe 33.
And 4 of those are venomous. But people will be scared of even the smallest little garden snake. What are the snakes that pose a threat to people?
I don't think any of them do, but that's just my opinion.
Well, qualify that. No, I'm curious. Curious why.
I mean, venomous snakes use their venom to subdue their prey. They don't want to waste it defending themselves. A lot of bites from a copperhead or a rattlesnake are dry bites. There's no venom. It's just a get away from me type thing. And if they do use venom, then it can be serious because the venom is designed to break down meat, and we're made of meat. So it's just kind of accidental that we are kind of the same proteins that a mouse is or a rat. Something like that. It's just...
But there's no way, even as large and as vicious and ominous as we think a rattlesnake is, it's still teensy-weensy, and he looks at us and says, well, I can't eat that.
Yeah.
They swallow their food whole.
Yeah, and a large rattlesnake is what, 2.5 inches tall? Standing on his ribs.
So they would swallow let's say they eat a mouse. They're going to swallow that mouse whole.
Sure. And
the venom breaks it down once it's in their throat, stomach, right?
Yeah, well, the venom starts the process, and then when the snake swallows it, then the digestive juices take care of the rest. I mean, all that makes it through a snake's digestive tract is some hair.
So it's not going to swallow you or me. It's not going to. What's the biggest thing a snake will eat?
Well, it depends on the snake.
Let's say a small rabbit, maybe. Or a
large rattlesnake, maybe a gray squirrel or a small rabbit.
Well, that debunks the myth right there. Then why would a snake be scary? You never know, though, because if you do startle one, and the first thing they're going to do is lay still and hope you just walk right past. But if you get in there and mess with them, they may choose to defend themselves. But you're saying even then they may not put venom into you.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that snakes are not to be respected, because a bite from a rattlesnake or copperhead can be quite serious. But, it's an unusual thing. I mean, we have in Kentucky maybe 1 or 2 snake bite deaths a year, and almost always that's some guy who has a rattlesnake in an aquarium and decides to demonstrate that he can kiss that rattlesnake on the head. That actually happened the guy was bitten on the lip. And he survived it, but I don't think he ever did that again.
So you're advocating respect for snakes.
Respect for all wildlife.
It's always amazed me that people can be so terrified of a snake but not hesitate to get right up next to it with a hoe or a shovel to cut its head off. It's like, if you're really that afraid, back off, leave it alone.
But there's some of this is probably innate also.
Sure.
When I taught school for 6 years. When I taught 7th graders, every kid in the class wanted to hold the snakes. When I taught 9th graders, there were quite a few that, something happened in that 2-year period, and they didn't want anything to do with a snake and didn't want to be near it, and truly gave them the willies. It's probably something that comes from our primate heritage, where, snakes in some parts of the world, a lot of them are dangerous, like cobras in Southeast Asia or large pythons. And
the constrictor snakes, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near. But there are some snakes out there that maybe they could handle you and me. Are there snakes in the world that will go after a creature our size?
Anaconda.
Yeah, sure, an anaconda or a Burmese python or a reticulate python. They're big enough, and they don't seek out people, but, if someone leaves a baby sleeping by the riverbank while she's washing clothes and a python comes along and finds that.
It's a free meal.
That's right. It's no different. To the python, that's no different than a large rat or a puppy. Or
What is the snake that we see snake charmers charming? It's like from India, and what is it?
It's an Indian cobra.
It's a cobra. And there are no cobras in Kentucky.
No.
No.
Okay. So in Kentucky, you have the pygmy rattler, the rattlesnake, copperhead, and the cottonmouth are the four that are. But the other ones, 32. Every time you see a snake, it's going to kill me. It wants to kill me. It's green. It's going to kill me.
People don't know one snake from another.
And it's probably hard.
I kind of blame that on the elementary school teachers and the middle school science teachers. For not doing a better job teaching that stuff. Overall,
the roles of snakes. I wouldn't want to live, I said earlier, in a state without snakes because they really have a role. Tell me what that is.
It's the same as anything else. They're part of the food chain, and they can provide a meal to another animal. Possums eat venomous snakes, but also they're keeping control of a lot of things that we consider pests, like small mammals, rats and mice and things like that. For garter snakes, garden pests, I love having garter snakes in my garden because I know they're eating stuff that will eat my vegetables. So for me, that's a positive role.
John, what do you think? Do they exist on their own? Are they out there independently, or do they have a role?
I think they're much more beneficial in urban areas and on farms, than they are out in the woods. I mean, out in the woods, they're just part of the balance. But when they get into a town, they control things like house mice and English sparrows, starlings, slugs. I mean, garden pests. And where there's a big concentration of people, snakes really step up. You can step up without any legs, and they control things.
Some snakes eat other snakes. I'm thinking the king snake. And so, if you want to kill a snake, if you don't like snakes, certainly don't go out and kill a king snake. Yeah. Don't kill a snake anyway.
Yeah, but most people wouldn't know a king snake from Adam.
Yeah.
And if it's dark, it's a black snake. If it's got a pattern on it, it's a copperhead. If it's near water, it's a moccasin. And if it vibrates its tail, it's a rattlesnake. And notwithstanding the fact that most large snakes vibrate their tails as a defensive mechanism because it draws attention away from the head. And so if something attacks the tail, the snake has a chance to get away. And that's probably why rattlesnakes have rattles to begin with.
Snake ain't so dumb, is he, Laurie?
No.
I'm impressed. So snakes aren't the bad guys after all, but at Halloween, every one of them is out to get you, and every one of them is poisonous. Don't know why, just that one night a year, and that's one of them is that follow them around year-round. That you shouldn't believe. Next critter. We don't have wolves in Kentucky anymore, but once upon a time we did. And they like to howl, and I guess you could include coyotes in that mix, because they like to howl at the moon. But wolves certainly are a part of Halloween. What's the folklore surrounding a wolf?
Well, the werewolf, of course, is a big one, but wolves are not the same as dogs. Everybody wants to have them behave the same as a domestic dog, but they're not. They run in packs, and canids that run in packs tend to be very dangerous. And there was a time that you actually did have to worry about wolves attacking you if you were off in the woods on your own. You were just as much prey as anything else, or just as much dangerous to the wolf, and something that the wolf may need to defend itself from. The howling at night, just like the owls as far as I'm concerned, is just another creepy night noise that reminds you that you're also part of the food chain. That makes it scary.
A lot of Halloween is what you hear. And what you hear, if you can't look at it and see what's making the sound, if you can't isolate it, then you're thinking, what is that? Where's that coming from? What's it mean? Is it coming to get me? And if it's a hoot owl or if it's a coyote howling in the night, an owl eating a rabbit and it's screaming for its life, you never know what these things are. But a lot of Halloween simply is sound, and it happens at night. Organs playing, people screaming,
lightning flashing in the background,
thunder. We're playing some spooky sounds now just for dramatic emphasis to enhance the effect. We're talking with a couple of folks who know their way around wildlife, what's myth and what's not. Back with more. This is Kentucky Afraid Radio. We are into our last segment of our Halloween special. This is Charlie Baglin. John MacGregor and Laurie Davison, experts in wildlife and wildlife education, are in the studio. We will recap much of what we have talked about for the past 45 minutes or so in this short Kentucky Afield Radio report from 1999 or so.
Wildlife caught in the web of Halloween. We'll scare up a few details next on Kentucky Afield Radio. Every year we dress up as ghosts and ghouls and act like fools for Halloween. But come November 1st, we're back to being people. Unfortunately, some of the spirit of Halloween lingers on, and it does so in the lurid tales of wildlife. Bats, spiders, snakes, some creatures have received a devilish reputation that trails them year-round. Deserving or not, you decide. But to find out how it started, you have to dig, because the answers are buried, not in crypts and coffins, but in very inventive folklore.
The werewolf, that comes again from European legends, but that started very, very simply. Rabies. If a person was bit by a rabid wolf, they indeed did give indications of being something somewhat different than a human being before they died. They attacked people, they bit them, and through the generations, the wolf becomes a supernatural being.
Ron Bryant is the retired curator of rare books at the Thomas D. Clark Center for Kentucky History. Ron says there is wildlife throughout the pages of history. Some tales date back to the 8th and 9th centuries. This was the era of the bubonic plague in medieval Europe. As society then was obsessed with death, this helped give rise to the really good stuff of Halloween. The living dead, monsters, ghosts, and a tangling of science with imagination. The vampire bat.
As early as the 1700s, people were writing vampire stories using a bat as a symbol, which stuck in popular literature. And of course, in 1897-98, Bram Stoker finished off the bat's reputation forever with the novel Dracula.
All media perpetuate the myths of Halloween, and animals are a constant presence. In 1938, the CBS radio broadcast of the War of the Worlds caught a nation believing that Martians had landed. But the description of these aliens as they emerged from their spaceship wasn't as a monster or little green men, but as animals.
Something big out of the shadow like a gray snake. They look like tentacles to me. Oh, yeah, I can see the thing's body now. It's large, and large as a bear. If I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. It's so awful.
And what is so awful is also so true. Just as candy canes sell Christmas, animals, as with Halloween, sell nightmares. The creatures of the night, or that are black, such as bugs, cats, and bats, or critters that are otherwise veiled in secrecy. We fear what is lurking in the shadows. We avoid gloom and the unknown. They all signify darkness, and darkness frightens us.
And another creature, the newt or salamander, eye of newt, that is immediately part of a witch's brew to cast a spell.
We want our children to appreciate nature and the bugs that come with it, but nursery rhymes can often beat us to the punch.
Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Along came a spider and sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. immediately the spider is something that we fear. There is an element of death about a spider.
In cellars, attics, and other haunts, you can dust off an old book and hence an old way of thinking, but it's hard to separate phobias from facts, like the serpent from the snake.
Our view of the serpent comes from the Old Testament, when the serpent was the first to give in to Satan. But look, in ancient Greece, the serpent was used as a symbol of life. Even the medical profession still has the intertwined serpent on a staff that represents them. That is why so many things in our culture has a negative connotation from European tradition on down to modern times, and we cannot shake it.
The real magic is in recognizing that even creepy crawly creatures have a place in nature, and what's scary is how out of tilt nature may be without them. Every cog in the wheel has a purpose, just as all wild creatures. Still, there's no denying that some animals are held hostage in their link to Halloween. We mix fright with fun. Yet for wildlife, despite a wiser, more sophisticated culture, at trick-or-treat, folk tales are still up to their old tricks.
Now, Kentucky, you can grow pumpkins in your garden. I looked and I found that some of our neighboring states are among the top pumpkin producers: Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. You know much about the pumpkin?
The jack-o'-lanterns, of course, did not start out as pumpkins. They started out as turnips.
Turnips, I heard that.
It's a Celtic thing. Some guy that was caught in that purgatory realm, apparently Satan had tossed him a hot coal from the depths there, and he hollowed out a turnip and put it in there to light his way around purgatory. If you had a turnip lantern, it became a way of helping that guy light his way away from your house and on down the road.
I like Charlie Brown. I like Linus and his belief in the Great Pumpkin. You often wonder, well, how big is the Great Pumpkin? I looked up some stats online. 95% of the pumpkin crop comes from Illinois. But I was trying to find here the world's record for the largest pumpkin, 2,009 pounds. A grower in Rhode Island. There are state records for pumpkins, and Kentucky's state record set back in 2010, J.J. Van Hook out of Somerset grew one that weighed 1,331 pounds. I'm hoping J.J. is listening in on WTLO in Somerset because our show is carried there. Well, obviously the show has come to an end. Any last thoughts on the subject of Kentucky's wildlife and Halloween before we say go?
As much fun as it is to be creeped out by these creatures, go ahead and allow yourself that willing, what do they call it? The willing suspension of disbelief. Yeah. Then get over it the next day because they're really not that bad.
Go to one of the JC haunted houses. These are major fundraisers in a lot of small communities, and they put a lot of effort into it, and they're really fun to go to.
Goes to a good cause.
Even if you don't have little kids, it's still fun to go to these things.
Oh, yeah.
And if you want to subsidize your haul, I encourage you to buy your favorite candy bars and sneak them into your bag. Later on, while you're sorting through all your candy and your parents see it, they may wonder, why is there an even dozen Three Musketeers bars? And why is there 24 Reese's Peanut Butter Cups? Scarier things have happened. It's not cheating. It's Halloween.